The sun hung low over Red Hollow, a dusty western town where justice often rode on the wrong horse. Wooden porches creaked in the afternoon heat, store signs clattered in the dry wind, and the townsfolk moved like shadows, quiet, watchful, and always one spark away from fear. But on this day, that spark had already been struck, because in the center of the town square, a crowd had gathered, some curious, some cold-hearted, some pretending not to enjoy what they came to watch. Dust swirled around their boots as murmurs rose like smoke from a burning barn, and at the very center of that circle stood Clara Wynn, 23 years old, trembling, her hands tied, tears streaking down her dirt-smudged face. Her white blouse was torn from the struggle, her breath unsteady, her hair clinging to her cheeks. Behind her stood Deputy Marshal Crane, a broad-shouldered man with a jaw carved out of stone and a reputation soaked in cruelty. His gloved hands clamped down on Clara's arms as though holding a prisoner guilty of the darkest crime. Clara's voice cracked as she tried to speak. "Please, you're making a mistake. I didn't do anything." Crane didn't loosen his grip. "You stole from the Carson trading house. Enough food to feed a family for a week. That's a crime in Red Hollow." "I didn't," she cried. "Someone planted that sack on our porch. I swear it." Her voice broke into a sob, but Crane's expression didn't flinch. Behind him, Sheriff Jed Carson, a man whose name was written on half the town's buildings and stamped on the bank's front door, stood with arms folded. A wealthy man, a powerful man, a dangerous man. The crowd parted as Clara's father, Thomas Wynn, pushed through. His old boots kicked up dirt as he approached, his hands trembling. Thomas was a quiet rancher, a widower, and a man who had lived in Red Hollow all his life without ever raising his voice. Until today. "Sheriff," he shouted, "you let her go. My daughter never stole so much as a feather off a bird." Sheriff Carson turned slowly, tilting his hat upward with a calculated calm. "Tom, your girl was seen near my warehouse last night." "That's a lie," Thomas roared. Carson's smirk deepened. "3 men say they saw her." A hush fell. Everyone knew what that meant. In Red Hollow, 3 men's lies weighed more than 1 woman's truth. Clara screamed again, this time from pure frustration and fear. "Pa, I didn't, I swear on Mama's grave." "I know, sweetheart, I know," Thomas whispered, but his voice cracked. Crane pushed Clara forward against a wooden post in the center of town. She stumbled, her hands scraping the rough timber, her breath catching in panic. The crowd leaned in, not to help, but to stare. A long, dreadful silence followed. Sheriff Carson finally spoke, loud enough for the whole town to hear. "Clara Wynn is to face public punishment for theft. A message for all who think they can take from the Carson family." A wave of whispers washed over the crowd. Clara gasped. "No, please, not like this, please, Sheriff." Her pleas echoed across the square, and for a moment, even the wind seemed to stop and listen. Thomas Wynn stepped forward, fists clenched. "You do this, Sheriff, and you'll regret it." Carson raised a brow. "You threatening me, old man?" "I'm telling you." Thomas growled, voice shaking with rage and helplessness. "You're punishing the wrong person." But Carson just nodded to Crane. The deputy pressed Clara harder against the post. Her scream tore through the air, raw, terrified, and unforgettable. It raced down the dusty street, through saloon doors, past the blacksmith's forge, around the church bell tower, and deep into every listener's bones. Men flinched. Women held their breath. Children hid behind skirts. The whole town heard her screams, and none dared to stop it. Not when Sheriff Carson ruled the town like his own kingdom. Thomas stood rooted in place, tears burning in his eyes, fists shaking so violently he thought his bones might crack. He wanted to fight. He wanted to kill. He wanted to tear down the whole damn town. But Carson had guns pointed at him from 3 different angles, and so Thomas did nothing, except watch. He watched the injustice. He watched his daughter break. He watched the town, his home, become a place he no longer recognized. When it was over, Clara collapsed at her father's feet. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering, avoiding Thomas's eyes. Carson walked away without a hint of remorse, not knowing he had just lit a fuse. Thomas lifted Clara gently, whispering in her ear, "I swear to you, girl, I'll make this right, even if I have to bury this town myself." And as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Red Hollow didn't know. A storm had been born, a silent one, a father's wrath. And tomorrow, no one in Red Hollow would forget the day Thomas Wynn chose the unthinkable. Red Hollow awoke the next morning to a strange silence. No horses neighing, no miners laughing, no saloon piano echoing down the street. Just a thick, heavy stillness. Inside their modest cabin, Clara slept restlessly, haunted by the humiliation of the previous day. Her father sat beside her, his hand gently brushing her forehead, trying to quiet the storm inside him. But the truth was, the storm had already taken root. Thomas stood, walked to the small chest under his bed, and lifted the lid. Inside lay a revolver, an old Colt Navy, and a tarnished star badge. A marshal's badge. His badge, one he had hung up 12 years ago after losing his wife. He stared at it, a piece of his past he hoped he'd never wear again. But now, he pinned the badge onto his vest. Clara stirred awake as he holstered the gun. "Pa, what are you doing?" Thomas knelt beside her. "Something I should have done a long time ago." "You can't fight them," she whispered. "Sheriff Carson runs this town." "Not after today," Thomas said, voice low and steady. "Today, justice rides again." Clara grabbed his hand. "Pa, please don't get hurt for me." "For you," he whispered. "Girl, I'm doing this for every soul in this town who's been crushed by that man." He kissed her forehead. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." Then he walked out into the cool morning air. The town sees a ghost. When Thomas Wynn stepped onto Main Street wearing that old star badge, the townsfolk froze as though they'd seen a resurrected legend. Whispers spread fast. "Is that Tom Wynn? He's armed. He's wearing a badge. What in God's name is he planning?" Thomas didn't look at anyone. He walked straight toward the sheriff's office. Inside, Sheriff Carson was sipping coffee, laughing with his men. Crane noticed first. "Sheriff, we got a visitor." Carson turned and saw the badge. The cup fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. "Well now," Carson muttered. "Tom Wynn, the ghost of Red Hollow, back from the dead." Thomas didn't smile. "Sheriff, I'm here for one thing." Carson leaned against the desk, trying to hide a flicker of unease. "And what's that?" "Justice." Carson laughed. "You planning to take the town on by yourself?" "No," Thomas said. "Just you." He tossed a folded paper onto the sheriff's desk. Carson opened it, and the color drained from his face. It was a signed warrant, old but still legal, granting Thomas full authority as Deputy U.S. Marshal, renewed automatically unless formally retired, which he never had. "You're bluffing," Carson growled. Thomas rested his hand on his gun. "Try me. The truth comes out." Thomas turned toward Crane. "You lied about seeing my daughter at the warehouse." Crane's face tensed. I didn't. I saw." "You saw nothing," Thomas cut in. "But someone paid you to say you did." Carson's jaw twitched. Thomas continued, voice rising. "Carson accused my daughter because last week I refused to sell my northern pasture. The river runs through it, the richest land in Red Hollow, and he wanted it." Someone in the doorway gasped. The truth was out. Carson lunged for his gun, but Thomas was faster. In one fluid motion, the old marshal's revolver snapped up, hammer pulled back. "Don't," Thomas warned. Crane trembled. "Sheriff, maybe we should." "Shut up," Carson barked. But the crew of Carson's deputies had already stepped back. Fear, guilt, or both. Thomas stepped forward. "You tortured my daughter to break me. You humiliated her to force me to give up my land." Carson snarled. "So what now, Marshal? You gonna kill me in front of my men?" Thomas's voice turned to steel. "No, I'm going to arrest you under U.S. law." Carson spat. You think the town will follow you? Thomas opened the door, revealing the entire street filled with townsfolk, silent, watching, waiting. Looks like they already are, he said. The gunfight. Carson's eyes darted, calculating, desperate. Then he made his choice. He grabbed his gun. A single gunshot cracked through Red Hollow. Dust exploded from the street. Women screamed. Men ducked for cover. Windows shattered. When the smoke cleared, Carson was on the ground. His gun lay a few feet away. Thomas Wynn stood above him, revolver steady, breathing hard. Carson's eyes widened in shock. You shot me. Thomas looked down at him with a cold, righteous fire. No, Carson. You shot yourself the moment you hurt my daughter. Carson's eyes dimmed as his reign over Red Hollow ended. The silence after the storm. The townspeople stood frozen, stunned, not from the gunshot, but from what came next. Thomas lifted his voice so everyone could hear. Yesterday, you heard my daughter's screams. Today, let this be the day you remember. Justice finally spoke louder. A hush fell over Red Hollow. A deep, reverent silence. A silence that felt like the town itself was breathing again after years underwater. The day of reckoning had finally come, and it silenced every voice that once supported cruelty. The end.